Hi everyone. I painted this probably 3 years ago or so, and recently I had pulled it back out and I wanted to share how I paint my little bees. And I got so many requests for how to paint this type of flower with this style that I used here. So I'm going to go ahead and show that to you. And I believe because I had it written on the back of another paper with this, I had written Sunset Peonies. So you can Google her or look her up. She may even have a YouTube channel. I think we paint differently, but I think I liked this little poppy. She's referring to him as a peony. But to me, they kind of look like a puppy. Okay. With that being said, this is that paper that I tell you about all the time, the Artisto. And I'm going to be using my, let's see, I think I will use my Velvet Touch 8 round. And we'll just go ahead and paint this little guy here. And that way you can go ahead and give this a try on yours. All right, let's see here. Okay, so I'm going to start with, and I actually went in and I did a few things here. Excuse me. I kind of darkened up because those are the leaves in front, the petals in front rather. But let's go ahead and paint this one. So knowing that I love my wet and wet, I'm going to go ahead and give it a coat. I'm going to use my Cad Yellow Winsor Newton. And I think I've got a tiny touch of yellow ochre in there. That just happened to be in my palette. So that's fine too. And I'm going to give it a light wash. Now I'm going to also, that's a little vibrant for me. So I'm going to rinse my brush off a bit and grab some of that and lighten it up a little bit. I don't like that real bright yellow, like lemon yellow. And then as I'm doing this, I'm also going to leave white spaces in here. So I'm not fully covering my whole entire petal. Now what I'll do is I'll go in with that Cad Orange. Let me grab a little bit more of that. And I'm going to just use the tip of my brush, very light pressure, and holding my brush somewhat upright so I can incorporate the tip of my brush. I'm going to go into the bottom here and just give it some little tap-ins, and because it's wet, it's going to spread really nicely. If you feel like you might have a little too much paint on your brush or water, you can always tap in. And as you see here, it's spreading really nicely. I think what I will do is just get a little bit of that off and then just drag it upwards a little bit, like that, okay? And maybe around that edge. Next, what I want to do is go into my Cad Red, which be really careful with Cad Red. It's quite, look at that. I hardly had any on my brush. And what I have found is any paints with Cad before them seem to be very opaque. So that Cad Red is really, really strong. Be kind of careful, light-handed with that. Now, when I touch in here, I'm just going to let it start blending. What I might even do is tilt my paper and let it blend upwards, just like that. So I quite like that. might just give it a little help here. And just spread it a little. There we go. So we get that really pretty blend. I'm going to go into my orange and just maybe create a few spots like that. Now, I don't like hard edges, so I'm going to go in with just a damp brush, very little pressure, and go around that edge just to soften that up a bit. And then wiping off my brush so I can just pick up a little of that. That's just me. I really like the soft blends. And then let's move over to this petal here. I'll just repeat what I did. So I'm going to go into that cad yellow. And again, if you think you have a little too much water, just tap on your paper towel there. And when I go in, I don't want to cover the entire petal. I want to leave some white. Like that. So I left this white at the top here. And then let's go ahead and go into the back here, but being careful not to touch into this petal because it's wet, so it'll blend. I'm going to leave just a tiny, if I can here, bit of space between this petal and the one I've got painted here. Again, I'm using the side of my brush to get some of those wider strokes and also the tip. Okay, I'm gonna wash and rinse my brush. And so I rinsed my brush and I'm gonna go in and I dabbed it off and just again, I will soften, kind of feather some of these edges like that. Now, because that's the back petal, I'm going to want it to be a little less value than this one. So let's pick up a little bit of that orange and tap in. Now what I might do before I finish this painting is I might go in and just darken this one a little bit. Let's actually even go in right now and add a little bit of red down at the bottom. Because we want our petals in front to be a little darker. Yeah, I quite like that. And actually, while this is wet and we're letting this dry, let's just go in. I'm just barely touching into that red because remember, again, that cad red is really vibrant and potent. And just tapping in here like that. Yeah. You can tilt your page if you like and let it kind of work down. Okay. While this is a little wet, I think I will go in there and just add a tiny bit of orange. I don't want it too dark in value because my end goal is for the back petals to be a little bit lighter in value. So that they look like they're in the back. And all my brush strokes are facing back to the center here. like that. I'm going to grab a little fine liner. Hold on 1 second. I will be right back. Okay, I am coming back. I apologize for that little lapse. I need to eventually figure out here how to do some editing. Okay, so we've got this petal in front is a little bit darker. Now let's go on to this back petal. Again, I want to leave a little bit of white space here. Let me pick up some of that cad yellow, very light value, meaning it just has a lot of water. And let's do this petal a little different. So I'm rinsing off my brush here. Let's wet it first and really get that washy look. Now I'm not completely wetting it. I'm leaving a little bit of white space here and there. So look how pretty that is already. And then I'm just going to touch in like that. There we go. Yeah, I quite like that. See how these values, the darker value really pops up front? It makes a big difference. Make sure you're always playing with those values. Just gonna add in a tiny bit of cad orange. Like that. There we go. Yeah, I like that. We might go in with a little bit of that cad red. I'm going to first really lighten it with some water. So it's much lighter than the petal in front. And let's just tap in a little. Just like that. And you can either blow on the paint, or you can tilt your page like that. See how nice that is? And what I'll do as well is, before I finish this, I'm going to go in once this dries and create a glaze over this to just darken this petal a bit. I could even do that on this one, but I think why I left it is because I really liked this little water bloom here, and I didn't want to cover that up, so I left that. And this has a little lip here too, that while we're waiting for this to dry, we could go in and paint that. So let me grab a little paint here. And just using the very tip of my brush, going in like that. There you go. Okay. This right now, what I'm going to do is that push-pull technique I taught you, that I use a lot of times on my older paintings when I want to go in and just create a little bit more depth. So right now I went in and painted that. Now I've rinsed and washed my brush, and I'm just going to go in and push and pull. And pull that out. See how that feathers out, and it's so beautiful. I think we could do that here too. Let's try it there. Going into that cad orange again. There we go. Using a little bit darker value. And I'm going to just line the bottom of this. Might even dot in some red there. Pick up a little bit of that cad red, being very careful. dot it in. And then before it dries, I'm going to wash and rinse my brush, dry it off, and then just holding my brush parallel, horizontal to the page, I'm going to go in and just push and pull. You've seen me use this technique and I just really love it. I love how it creates such a beautiful transition there. I feel like I want to darken the middle of that too, the middle of this flower. Now I'll have to be a little careful because of the black here. I don't want to pick that up. Yeah, that's what I wanted. I'm just going in between all of these little black dots. There we go. Yeah, I like that a little bit better. I could pull it out a tiny bit, but I don't want to pick up any of that, those black dots, because that might really go crazy. Okay. Yeah, I like that a lot better. Let's go back to this one here, and we're just going to darken up that bottom. Let me grab my Cad Red. Ooh-wee, that is dark. Okay. And let's touch in just along the bottom, just dabbing in with the tip. Like that. Wash, rinse my brush, tap it off. Just barely want it damp. And then I'm going to push and pull. Now hopefully that's dry, otherwise I might get a little bloom here, which is fine. There we go. Yeah, I like that. I might even, I'm gonna rinse my brush, tap it off. Might even feather this edge a little bit. Yeah, like that. Like that. There we go. Isn't that pretty? I feel like I want to do that center red part right here. This is going to be black. So let's just tap in there. And rinse and wash my brush. Just barely feather that edge. There we go. It kind of makes you look like you're looking down inside it. And we can do the same thing here. So going into that red, just the tiniest bit with the tip of my brush. That's why we want to also be so careful about always protecting the tips of our brush. And I'm just going to tap in a little bit here, like that. Yeah. And wash and rinse my brush. Tap it off so it's just barely damp. I think I stuck my arm in this one here. And then I'm going to feather it, just barely touching it with the tip of my brush. There we go. Yeah, I quite like that. We could even go in here and add in a tiny bit of that red, like that. There we go. Wash and rinse my brush and feather it out. Be very careful and try and leave some of these white spaces because it creates so much beauty and interest. I think that's really, really nice. The other thing I will do is I'm going to go around this edge, but let's get it a little bit wet, just barely damp. And then I'm going to just touch in a bit with my orange. So just using the tip of my brush and just tapping up here like that. Isn't that pretty? Yeah, I like that. Kind of like this effect here. Yeah, that's pretty. What you can do as well is wash and rinse your brush and pull using very light pressure, just pulling. Now I've got a little bit too much water on there. Some of those down like that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, let's get this little guy here. Although before we do that, I don't want this to dry too much before I create that stem. So I'm gonna go in and pick up my sap green and my olive green, that beautiful tea consistency, and go in and touch this and let it bleed. Now, it might not bleed as much as I would like because I somewhat let that dry, but that's okay. And then just the tip of my brush and come down. Look how pretty that is. Yeah. Wash and rinse my brush. And we could even feather this a bit and kind of encourage it to bleed. There we go. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I feel like I need to redo this one a little bit. So I'm going to, gosh, I really want to redo this, but I'm really like this little bleed. So I'm just going to touch in a tiny bit here, get it a little bit wet. Like that. No puddles. And then I will go in with that green. Yeah, I like that. There we go. I think what I remember about this one is I felt my stem was a little off center, but that's okay. And then for these tiny, tiny little hairs, I found this brush, but you could really use, what I'd like is the Princeton Rigger. I'm kind of saving up for that one. And look at this point. I mean, it is really tiny. It's just a little fine liner. And you just drag out these little hairs like that. Now that kind of dried down there. There we go. Yeah. I don't know, I'm a little leery to go in and paint that black center. And I feel like what made these so interesting is all the white space that I left in there. I think that was really fun. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to make this red. So let's just pick up a little bit of that red. Again, being careful. And be very careful here too, because if the petal next to it is not dry, it's just going to spread like crazy. So I just wiped off my brush and I'm picking a little bit up. I don't usually work in this much detail, but kind of in one of those moods today. And then leaving that white space I think is so important. And I'm just gonna leave that like that. let's go in and see if we can paint this black, or Payne's gray actually is what I use. I don't usually use black. It's a little bit too dark for me. And because I don't want to get a spread, you know what, I'm gonna tap in some here too. There we go, yeah. I'm going to avoid touching the areas around it because I have a feeling they may just be wet enough to make it spread. And then typically if the area is not cool, it means it's dry. So let's try and tap in some of these dots. Yeah, we're good. So there we go. That recognizable poppy little dots. Okay. And the other thing I might want to just show you how I did it was painting these little bees. Let's paint, let's see, let me grab this. And where could we put a bee? I suppose I could do another tiny one right here. So wash and rinse your brush, pick up that cad yellow. Ooh, see, that's that cad color, and it can really have an opaqueness to it. And let's just, how about if we do this one a little different? We will go like this. They're cute little bee bodies. And then I'll wash and rinse my brush, and I'm gonna go in very carefully because this is gonna spread like crazy. Go in with my black. And I don't mind if it touches a little, but I do want to leave some white space in there. Like that. And then we'll go in and create his little head here. Like that. And for his wings on bees, I always just wet my brush, rinse it, wipe it off for the most part, and then I pull out like that. There we go. Now on the ones I have sideways, I add those little legs in. And really, you could use a pen here. I've had some of my students use a pen because it's just such tiny little detail work, which really isn't my thing. And there you go. All right, well, I hope you had fun watching that. And if we wanted, we could really pick up some of this color in the back and make it a little bit more transparent. And let me show you how to do that. Let's get this wet. Now this is lifting. So we're gonna get it nice and wet, and then I'm going to take a tissue and I'll just dab it and see if we can lift some of that up. Some colors lift better than others. I don't want to touch those bees. I'm going to get it wet again. And lift again. So it took a little bit off. Not too much. So there you go. I will list all the brushes and colors. These were all Winsor Newton colors, and I will list them all below for you. And happy painting, everybody. Add these little fun bees to all kinds of your little paintings. They always add a little something special, I think. I'm just using this tiny brush there. There. All right, happy painting, everyone, and I will see you all soon.